Cold light seeped through the carbon glass ceiling of Arcadia Exchange, refracting off 12 colossal double helixes that hung like chandeliers above the trading pits. Each helix represented a commodity gene: longevity, analgesia, night vision, pheromonal dominance, the usual treasures that kept the metropolis stratified and docile. Brokers in bone-white suits shouted bids that sounded like chemical formulas. 3 milliliters of 4L serotonin mod for 6 nanograms of OXR12. Lot 19, enhanced clotting factor, reserve price 500 empathy units. No one traded with coins, notes, or digits anymore. Every wrist in Arcadia bore a transdermal port that let officials debit or credit nucleotide strings in real time. A mother might sell 5% of her future dopamine production to afford her child a semester in a Tier B air dome. A factory foreman could mortgage his telomeres for a promotion, shaving years off his life to beat the next man to stagnation. The poor grew physically dimmer, skin pallid from diluted melanocytes, pupils slow from bargain neurotransmitters, while the syndics in the spire grew increasingly radiant, spliced with whatever baubles struck their fancy. The most coveted commodity of all, however, was not strength or beauty. It was indifference. The patrician council had long ago bought out their own capacity for sorrow, installing in its place a sleek recombinant complex nicknamed calyx null, a sweet that neutralized mirror neurons and muffled guilt like foam in a gun barrel. When the city rioted, their consciences slept through the smoke. When entire boroughs drowned during forced canal drainage, their pulses barely rose. Moral numbness, packaged and standardized, had become the governing class's armor and its greatest vulnerability. Lyra Kale watched the trading floor from a maintenance gantry, the orange safety vest hiding a genome forge that hugged her lower spine. She was 28, narrow-shouldered, and wore her hair in twin braids that radiated static whenever she thought too hard. To the scanning towers, she appeared to carry nothing more valuable than mid-grade hemoglobin. The forge inside her, lined with quantum polymer, fooled every authority index in the city. It was her life's work, her smuggler's bag, her rebellion. Below, a broker's shout faltered. For a heartbeat, the hall went silent, the hush of predators clocking scent. A shipment of Compulse, the newest appetite suppressant, had just been flagged counterfeit. Security enzymes fizzed in atomizers, blue mist snaking across marble. People scattered, coughing. Lyra took that as her cue to melt into the underbelly of the exchange, down stingy stairs that smelled of ozone and rat fur, toward the dripping bowels where scrap conduits sparked. She rendezvoused with Tito Ran in an alcove lit by a single furnace moth. Tito was lean and jittery, his limbs tattooed with expiration dates he had once tried to pawn, bits of himself sold off to buy black market memories of his deceased brother. He greeted Lyra with an exhausted grin. "We're set." I tapped the central ledger. "We have a window of 6 hours before checksum resync." Lyra passed him a vial no longer than a bullet. Inside shimmered threads of code, encoded not in silicon, but in adenine and guanine. "This is the scaffold," she said. "We load it tonight or not at all." Tito raised the vial to the mothlight. "You're sure it'll do what you say?" "It won't just mimic compassion," she murmured. "It'll rekindle it. True affect, not the hormonal cotton candy they fry up in therapeutic bars. Once it's in circulation, everyone who transacts on the ledger will receive at least one propagating copy. The patricians will wake up feeling the full weight of us. And if they crush us quicker for daring, they'll be too busy weeping to issue orders." She allowed herself a tight smile. "Grief is disarming when you've never trained for it." Tito pocketed the vial. hands trembling. "All right, Forge. Tell me how you built a miracle." They walked through steam tunnels, toward Lyra's hideout. And as they walked, she told him the story she'd never told another soul. How she'd once interned at the Spire's Behavioral Genomics Institute, tasked with cataloging anomalies among street populations. How one afternoon, she'd met a child called Miel, born in the gutter row, whose cells produced an undocumented variant of the oxytocin receptor. The readings showed synaptic fireworks whenever Miel held another human's hand. The Institute logged her as a curiosity, harvested a pint of bone marrow, and euthanized her within the week to prevent sample degeneration. Lyra had stolen a sliver of that marrow, smuggled it out beneath her thumbnail, and the following night she resigned. The fragment had traveled with her through 10 years of hiding, until she matured enough skills and rage to weaponize it. "It's Miel's heart in that vial," Lyra finished. "A child's capacity for bottomless care, spliced onto a viral chassis that piggybacks on every ledger transaction." Tito exhaled a prayer that sounded like profanity. "Then let justice be feral." The lair was an abandoned subway terminus beneath Meridian Quarter. Gauze screens divided the space into labs fashioned from scavenged freezer units. Vines of copper wire drooped like jungle lianas, feeding power to benchtop bioreactors. In the center of the terminal stood the redemption engine, a repurposed fare gate lined with injector needles instead of ticket sensors. Soon, anyone who tried to board the ghost train would walk away altered. But Lyra knew that dosing strap hangers wasn't enough. The elite rarely rode subways. They lived above, perched in the Spire's crystalline clubs, where walls were transparent and nothing ugly was allowed to cast reflection. So she designed Phase 2. Hijack the central ledger that archived every genomic transaction. The ledger wasn't software in a server stack. It was living tissue, an enormous biorecorder grown from Hydra stem cells, floating in nutrient broth atop the pinnacle vault. Each time a citizen sold or bought genes, their wrist port transmitted a CRISPR signature to the organism, which logged and validated the trade through instantaneous cell division. Infused the ledger, and the city itself became distribution vector. To get there, she needed credentials, security clearance, and an escort drone keyed to her retinal salt pattern. Tito provided the drone. He had reflashed a courier unit from his factory shift. Credentials were trickier. Lyra fabricated them from orphaned identities scavenged at the crematorium, stitching data ghosts into new mosaics. By midnight, all was ready. Rain sheeted over the city like static on a dead channel as they ascended elevator 404 toward the vault. Through slits in the steel cage, Lyra glimpsed neighborhoods below. Glow ads promising personality reinstantiation and genomic cashback. Gutters flickering with spent luciferase from last night's protest. Arcadia seemed to sigh, exhausted of its own marvels. At level 70, they disembarked into a corridor the color of surgical silence. A single guard with chrome eyelids scanned Tito's drone tag, found no anomalies, and waved them through. The door Iris unfurled, revealing the ledger. It resembled a floating island of pink coral, its pleats throbbing as data pulsed across the city's electromagnetic veins. Catwalks ringed the tank, each rung patrolled by maintenance bots no larger than bees. Lyra's spine cooled with awe. For 10 years, she'd fantasized about rupturing this place. Now she feared she might cry before finishing the job. Tito set the courier drone on a rail. Its abdomen opened like a flower, revealing the vial. He whispered, "Just like rehearsed." Lyra knelt, keyed a sequence into her palm display, and the vial slid into a microsyringe. The drone dipped beneath the nutrient surface and pierced the ledger's membrane. Milky fluid spiraled out, carrying Miel's compassion into the organism's vascular maze. There was no alarm. The ledger counted the insertion as a legitimate update. One new trait, tagged as license-free, universal access. The moment the organism registered the event, a rippling wave traveled through its flesh, simultaneously calm and ravenous. Lyra knew the mutation would replicate itself across every ledger cell, and, by reflex arc, across every wrist patch in the city within minutes. It was done. She expected relief. Instead, she felt fear, raw and sour. What if compassion felt like agony to those who'd amputated it for so long? The sudden empathy might provoke suicide before repentance. An intercom crackled overhead. Unscheduled personnel, remain for debrief. A door hissed. Chancellor Varos emerged, flanked by two Center Guard officers. His suit shimmered with anti-micro-satellite plating. On his lapel sat the sigil of Calyx Null, a stylized empty chalice. Varos's smile was pure mathematics. Kyle, we had hopes you'd visit. You should have sold us your knack. We'd have paid you in immortality. Tito swore and reached for a concussion packet. One guard fired a neural tether. Tito convulsed, mouth foaming. Lyra lunged to shield him. The second guard drew a pulse knife. Varos raised a hand. Harm her, and we jeopardize evidence. Stand down. The Chancellor approached the tank, peering at the swirling bloom. What did you lace us with? Memory? Lyra spat. Of what it feels like to be human? His brow twitched, the first unprogrammed gesture she'd ever seen from him. You contaminated the ledger? He murmured, almost reverent. Fascinating. But why? There's no profit in compassion. You can't trade it. That's the point, she said. Varos turned, thoughtful. Remove the vial. We'll reconsider prosecution. It's already proliferated, she replied. There's no going back. The Chancellor's eyes flicked to the guard. Isolate the ledger. Purge the last update. Impossible, Lyra said softly. The trait is hard-coded as systemic parity. Purge it and you purge every logged balance, including your vaults. You'd crash the economy you thrown over. Varos hesitated. Sweat, or was it, beaded on his temple. He felt something. Lyra saw realization sharpen in his gaze. He cared, however fleetingly, for the value of life he'd hitherto dismissed. Panic blossomed. He gestured at the guards again. Shut it down anyway. Alarms hammered. Hydraulic arms descended to sever conduits. The coral flesh screamed. No sound, but a flurry of color as its neurons fired wildfire patterns. Lyra seized Tito's pack, hurled a canister of replicant pheromones. It burst in blue glare. The guards recoiled, tearing off visors. Varos stumbled back, hands to his face. Lyra dragged Tito down a maintenance chute, sliding into darkness as arc sirens dopplered above. They landed in a drip chamber somewhere around level 60. Tito convulsed again, but Lyra injected a buffer dose of neuronal stabilizers from her wrist pistol. He relaxed, eyes glazing. Did it work? She consulted her implant feed. An overlay of the city's network nodes pulsed gold. Transmissions flared like seeds on wind. It's everywhere. Tito managed to grin before passing out. Lyra ventured into the corridor. Everywhere she looked, people were crying. A janitor knelt by a spilled bucket, sobbing into his gloves. A courier on a monofilament board screamed apologies into empty air. In the elevator, a financier tore his contract tablet in half, moaning that he'd never known the meaning of debt until that instant. The entire structure trembled, not with violence, but with revelatory despair. Street level was chaos wrapped in tenderness. Protesters who'd once hurled bricks now hugged riot troops. Surveillance drones danced through puddles, projecting images of children who died in sweatshops. Executives collapsed, clutching their heads as the images carved empathy canals in long atrophied hearts. And yet, not all was placid. Guns discharged sporadically. Some could not handle the flood and sought to dam it with blood. Panic twined with contrition. Lyra walked through it like a ghost, unseen amid upheaval she had loosed. A woman with platinum irises approached, wearing the crest of Spire nobles. Tears silvered her cheeks. She gripped Lyra's sleeve. "Why does it hurt?" "Because you're alive," Lyra said, steady. She pressed her forehead to the stranger's. "Hold the pain. It means you can heal." Screens across the district flickered. Chancellor Varos appeared, eyes red. His voice shook. "Citizens, please. I have failed you. Effective immediately. The council dissolves. All genetic holdings will revert to commons." He broke off, sobbing. The feed cut. Dawn spread peach and rust over Arcadia. Mountaintop mansions opened gates for the first time in decades, their owners pouring down with blankets and medicine. In the shanties, children laughed to see suited elders scrubbing graffiti from charred walls. Some called it miracle, others, plague of feeling, yet none doubted its permanence. The trait was self-stabilizing. Any attempt to excise it would trigger lethal cascade. Evolution, hijacked, had declared a new baseline. Lyra returned to the subway terminus. The redemption engine now pulsed gentle green, though she no longer needed it. She sat beside Tito, who slept on a cot bathed in dawn shine, filtering through a cracked skylight. His breathing was easy. She recalled a memory of Miel. The girl had asked if people could taste colors, and when Lyra said no, Miel frowned, as if the deficiency were tragic. Perhaps today, with networks singing new notes, color would acquire flavor for everyone. Footsteps scuffed gravel. Varos appeared at the platform edge, unarmed, trembling like an ordinary man. "I followed the broadcast grid. Knew I'd find you here," his voice rasped. "You destroyed me." "I released you," she replied. "I feel every moment I ever denied," he whispered. "It's a flood with no shore. How do I keep from drowning?" "You learned to swim," Lyra said. She offered him her hand. After a lifetime of avoiding human contact, he clasped it. His palms were cold, but not as cold as memory had forecast. They sat, sharing silence pierced by faint rail echoes. Above, Arcadia rumbled, structures shifting, laws dissolving, markets reinventing themselves around a currency of shared ache. None could predict the shape of the next order. Compassion did not guarantee wisdom. Tears could harden into fresh dogma. But seeds had scattered, wild and ungovernable. Lyra believed in their stubborn bloom. Varos finally asked, "What now?" "Now," she said, "we clean up the mess we made of each other. Then we imagine a value system no vault can hoard." She looked at him, and in his eyes saw the terror and wonder of a child, seeing color for the first time. She squeezed his fingers gently. "And we pay for the world, not with genes, but with grace." Somewhere far above, the coral ledger drifted in its severed cistern, still glowing. The new trait within it copied itself with quiet diligence, as patient as dawn. It made no promises, offered no profit margin. It simply reminded every dividing cell that nothing thriving in a vacuum survives for long, and that the simplest cure for cold is to burn, however briefly, with kindness. Lyra closed her eyes and listened. The city's pulse, once arrhythmic with greed, now thundered like a single affrighted, hopeful heart. She exhaled, savoring the strange taste of peace, and prepared to begin the long labor of keeping it alive.